Welcome back to another episode of Agency Exposed. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey, great to see you guys this morning.
Great to see you. What are you drinking in that cup?
Well, it's not what we were drinking last night.
Yes.
It was Bob's birthday yesterday.
Yes, thank you.
And we hung out
awesome.
at Brad's house. And
Yeah.
Brad was nice enough to make a nice spread and have all kinds of whiskeys and wines and things.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was fun.
Exactly.
It was kind of an
and some cheese and
impromptu,
crackers.
a quick impromptu. You know, Bob lives right down the road from me. He's within walking distance. So I'm like, hey, it's your birthday today. I'm like, why don't you come over tonight if your family isn't, doing something. And so he walked by, and Ken's like, yeah, let's go.
I'm inviting myself.
No. I wanted to invite you anyways. I just thought it was like, hey, I didn't know Bob, hey, come on down if you want to.
That's awesome. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for doing that. And I think out of that came some really good discussion.
We talked a little bit about today. We talked
Yeah.
about, also how the power of the mind and all kinds of other things.
Yeah. So today I think we're going to talk about closing the deal, the art of closing the deal, tactics for closing deals, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Sales, man. That's always a challenge, huh?
Yeah. It's an interesting time that we live in, and lots of things going on and predictions, but we have to keep closing deals, filling the pipeline, right? So, Ken, I know that you guys are doing that quite actively here at Medicake, and certainly, Brad, you continue to grow your business. But let's talk about that. Let's unpack that today.
Well,
what are some strategies?
Well, first, one of the things, in your guys' experience, when it's a service, for any service business, you're dealing with usually proposal to trying to close big project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, we did it that way.
Yeah. Well, we've had other episodes. We talked about like RFPs and things,
Right.
and you're anti-RFP because that just sounds like a lot of work for free.
I am anti-RFP for sure.
Yeah. So
Not because, but just because I think it works in some business. Like you've found ways to make it work.
it's a lot
Maybe
of
not.
but
Maybe
well, I think we've been lucky.
Some
that
business models are built around the inefficiency of RFPs into their business.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, an
Good way to say it.
RFP is always a risk. So you have to vet the risk, and there's still a huge risk. And, the likelihood, the percentage of close to an RFP is actually really low. And I think that's what you've got to the point is it comes down to you have to look at your odds, right?
Yes.
And how much energy and effort you're going to spend of a team. Because I've been part of RFPs where, as an agency, we've spent $50,000 to participate in RFP that we did not get. Yeah. And so I won't do that personally with my agency. Yeah. I can't afford to do that.
I mean, if you know you're going to get a certain percent of those, and what your spend is, then you're willing to gamble that.
Sure.
But for most businesses, especially on the mid to lower side, like size wise and just even notoriety, that's probably not the strategy that works. One of the things I think we need to talk about before you can really improve your close rate is you need to be tracking your close rate and your pipeline in the different stages. And that's not it is simple, but a lot of people aren't doing it. And I know the first time we put that into place, you need to kind of think through okay, what are the logical stages that we go through that we want to track, of our funnel, this step to this step.
Yeah. We used to use, and we haven't really used it as much anymore, HubSpot to build our deal flow.
We use HubSpot too. Yeah.
Do you really? Mm-hmm. And so what does your deal flow look like? Tell me what that looks like if I were to build a deal flow today.
Yeah.
Here's the first step, second step, and here's the flow. What does that look like for your agency?
We have initial inquiry. So that is an unqualified lead that comes in. And then we have a qualified where it's a call. We have some sort of initial call where we qualify them.
Is that a predetermined, does somebody on your team do that, or is that something that
we've played with?
You have a predetermined kind of questionnaire, or is something you just build because you do a little research on the customer?
I don't know. We've bounced around in a few different ways. So one, we tried to automate that. We're like, hey, let's weed out anyone that's not qualified really fast, not get on the phone with them. And then we thought okay, unless we have literally hundreds coming in a week, we should probably talk to everybody. So we decided not to do the non-human side of it. We did do that for a little while. We just found that getting on the phone, we had the capacity to do it on the sales side. We have a couple people that help on and have different roles on the sales side, and it was a really good experience for the customer, even if they weren't the right fit. When you're talking to someone, so it's like kind of more white glove. And then the other side of it is we get information and data, and so I don't know. It took me until the last few years to come around to this, but I'm like, I don't care about being offended or anything like that. I just want to know, why does someone want to work with us or not want to work with us? And why are we right or not right for anybody? And so talking to them and asking those questions has been better in that qualification stage, And there are three specific questions that we ask every single time, actually, that my business coach mentioned to me. And these are powerful questions. One is, why now? Like, why did you contact us today? And the other one is, why us? Like, why did you contact us? Of all the people in the world, why did you contact us today?
We liked your website.
Yeah.
We liked your website.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
But those two questions. Then there's a third question about what would make this, if you looked back at the end of the project, what would the things be that make it a win?
Yeah. I love that one. That's an anchoring technique that works like magic.
And it works so like magic, and it's like a hack.
Yeah. Yeah, we do the same thing as, what would be the measurement of success for you? Like, what does success look like for you?
Well, here's the deal. Like, once you ask those questions, sorry, go ahead. Once you ask those questions, you know everything you need to know. So the why now is really interesting because, there was something in this person's day. Like, think about this in your day. Brad, you're a good example of this because you really value your time, and everyone should, but like you're focused on that.
Yeah.
What would make you pick up the phone and call someone that needs to help you get something done? Hey, whatever it may be. Like the other week, I had to call Comcast, the internet provider. I don't ever want to call an internet provider. I feel like that is, I never want to do that. That's not high on my list. It was just because the pain was so high at the time that it prompted me to do that.
You don't have a dedicated rep at Comcast? We do.
I should. Really?
Yeah, I got his direct number. He answers the phone every single time.
Dude, you need to send that to me. You need to send that to me.
Well, business rep.
Yeah. I know. I have a business account.
Oh, well, you should have a rep then. Sorry, I digress.
Okay, I need that.
Sorry.
I really do need that.
For those who are struggling with Comcast.
Wow. Okay. But anyway, there's like, why did someone have what prompted them to do it? That's a really powerful thing. If you know that, what prompted them to talk to you instead of everybody else in the universe? That's really powerful.
Or at least add you to the list.
Yeah. Well, even if it's just like, hey, maybe we're just talking to everyone. Okay. But what about what us? Like what,
what's unique?
It's interesting.
And then once they tell you that, you can then like really zero in on that, because that's already implanted in their head.
Yes. And I mean, there's like so many, like, again, like you go into sales psychology and there's all these little anchors that you're putting in, but it's also really powerful for you to know. And then the last one, like when you can ask them to look back and say, this is what a success would be, you essentially know exactly, aside from everything else you need to do, you know exactly what you would need to do to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So if they came back with success and you could tell that they weren't real thoughtful with that question and they gave you a kind of a vague, very common answer, like, we want our product to be known, or we want it to be, we want to grow our product, whatever, very general. How do you get them on that conversation to go, no, specifically?
Sometimes it's not, you may not have the rapport to dig in hard.
Yeah. You don't want to offend them.
Right. But the technique that I was taught that a lot of people use is the SMART goals technique.
Okay.
Right. So specific, measurable, action-oriented, results-based, time-bound, I think.
Yeah.
Or realistic, like reasonable and time-bound. And so like when they're determining what that thing is, when they're saying that, trying to get them to put that in, like how would you measure achieving that, right? Like would be one question. So like, yeah, we want our product to be known. Okay, cool. Like what would that mean? Like metrics, would that mean like, $1 million in revenue? Would that mean?
Well, I think that question does two things. That it manages expectations, so it allows you to see what their expectation, and then either try to expand and push them to something better, or pull them back to see if you're a good fit either way. Because the way that I pose that question, and everybody asks it differently, is like I actually try to get them to embody that experience. And I say, okay, let's say we were to get in a time machine and we were to go forward a year from now. You hired us, everything fired on all cylinders, and you're just ecstatic, right? Like I put emotion into it. Like you're ecstatic, and you go, and you were really glad that you hired us. What would that success look like? What is that? Yeah. And so if they say, you increased our revenue by, 500%, and we sold X amount, or our brand or whatever, that then gives you the opportunity to say your expectations are too high, and I don't think we can get you there, but I think we can get you this. Or sometimes you can really walk away and go, you know what? I think we're not the right agency for you, because but what it does on the other side of the positive side is it implants that, it anchors that memory in their brain. Because they actually went there, they thought about it, and now it's a memory and it's a connection between you and them that they don't have with other agencies, because you were present, you participated in it with them, they imagined it, you talked about that experience, and then now it's anchored with them, and they don't want to lose that potential experience that they believe they want to come forward.
And visualization, we know, is like a really powerful motivator. And so when you can get someone to really visualize, like all those words that you use, it's really, really good, right? Like that's a motivator to them, and something you can use.
Do you guys ever do any financial qualifications beforehand? Just so, like, let's say it's a startup that doesn't really have a track record, you can't really figure out if these guys are funded heavily or not enough, and they have these big goals. But do you ever try to find out, do they have enough resources to actually afford to do what they want to do with you?
For us,
or does that come later?
No, I think that's really important to kind of know early on. The challenge is that until you have some sort of rapport, it's hard to get that sometimes.
Because your question is, what do you want to accomplish? And then maybe the next question is, how much do you think it would cost to accomplish that?
Right, or how much you can invest.
Because when a lot of businesses are looking for agencies, they don't want to give that away. They want to hold that back and say, well, you tell me how much it's going to cost.
Right.
But sometimes it's good to know that they're on the same page, at least that or maybe that they have the ability. Because let's face it, some of the stuff it doesn't happen by just a bunch of people pulling levers in the back end. A lot of times it's spending, right? You got to spend enough in marketing, advertising.
Well, I think that they're like, so we were going through like a pipeline, right? But like, in my experience, there are three, at least in our philosophy, there are like three factors to a project. It's timeline, scope, and budget. In my opinion, you guys would agree, like if you believe that, you've got to know all three to really put a solution that really works for a client together. And so if they're like not willing to tell you one, then without being a jerk, I'd be like, okay, so that's like $10 million. Is that cool? Like that would, if all you care about is achieving the scope in the timeline, like the goal in the timeline, right? Scope can be, it's associated with the goal. Then, and you truly don't have a budget, that means it's a blank check. And but that's clearly not the case. So like, what would be the top end, or what would be, there's clearly a too much or too little in your mind or something like that. But I don't think you can get that early on. It's hard to get that early on. And a lot of people, I think, try and get that in the proposal stage, So like for our pipeline, we have that kind of like initial contact and then a qualification call. And then we would normally go to a discovery call. Like if they pass that, we'd go to a discovery call, which a proposal would come out of that, and we'd talk pricing and all that kind of stuff. I think the problem that we've found is there's a lot of risk, like that's pushing so far to the end of that, and you still don't know if you're going to get the project, if they have the budget. You try and find that out through conversations, those kind of things. But the further you get down that pipeline, you get a lot of risk, gets created on your side. Or risk is not the right word, but like there's just a lot of effort that gets put into that, right? And we know that most people are talking to a bunch of other people at the same time and all those kind of things. And so one of the best changes that we made to that, well, first you have to track those steps. Like you have to know those steps, you have to track them. So maybe it's inquiry, and maybe it's qualification, maybe it's discovery call, maybe it's proposal, maybe it's close. Like that might be someone's standard pipeline. We've adjusted our pipeline a little bit, and one of the things that has helped us close the most is like putting into place some sort of, and we were talking this earlier, some sort of small, very low cost, essentially strategy product that allows you, there's psychology in someone opening up their wallet. So that's part of the sales psychology. Like some skin in the game is I think it's important and healthy for both sides. Some skin in the game is really good. And then it also allows you to now engage together, and you have time to build to figure these things out. It's funny because like
it allows them to test the waters with you at a very low cost,
and and actually give them really good service. Like you get what you pay for. If you're getting, when I get if I get a house built, right, and then it's like throw in the architecture, the architect, and it's an expensive house. Like I want to spend money, I want to live here for the rest of my life or something, and I care about it, and paying an architect like saves you money in the long term, because it avoids problems. It thinks through things before you actually have real wood on everywhere, right? So it thinks through all those things. So that saves you money, and it saves you time for a little bit of investment up front. It also gets what you want in a nicer way, and it helps you feel like, oh, I feel confident that this house is going to be what I want. I feel confident that I should spend these things. Whereas if you just pay a builder and they just start building, or they maybe you talk to a bunch of builders and they say, yeah, your house is going to kind of look like this. It's going to kind of look like this. They're not getting paid to do that. So I think it's similar.
I always
to that.
look at like the Chip and Joni model, where what I'm saying, where they come in and they take an old house or something, but they show them the beach, right? They sit down and they show them drawings and show them what's going to look like and get them really excited about it. And I think that's part of the sale, right? If you can go in and break bread with them, get that rapport, and then you show them what you're all about, right? That builds that trust. But at the same time, you're helping them visualize what you're going to do, and then that solidifies everything.
Well, you also show them you remove the ambiguity of, like, okay, I'm interested in working with you guys, but I'm not ready to pull the trigger on a big, $100,000 proposal, whatever it is.
That's a big risk. It's really like dating.
Yeah.
But
it's like meeting someone and proposing like a day later.
And everybody's trying to get that money from them, right? All the other agencies.
Sure.
But what you do is you come in and say, hey, we're not ready to give you a proposal, but for X amount of dollars, whatever it is, a few $1,000, $1,500, $3,000, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you judge the cost of your half a day, whatever long it takes with them, and you cover that, but then you give them the value of a strategy, and then they will go, oh, you've removed all the ambiguity, you've given me a plan, and of course I want you to execute on that plan, right? 9 times out of 10.
Well, also the plan sometimes is developed a little bit with them, so they have ownership of that plan too.
I think that's the key. So I think if you can insert a step that develops trust, that builds in ownership to the solution, where they're alongside and and then the result is they have a lot of confidence in that solution. You know, then they feel better about moving forward. And if you can build in that step, and you can build that trust, then also you kind of eliminate competition for most of the time.
Yeah,
yes, that's good. It's a great strategy, and it works because I think sometimes we're scared, and especially solopreneurs, to charge people to ask money for a proposal. But this is a little twist on that. Instead of charging for a proposal, you actually say, what about this? We need to unpack this further, and we need to have, a strategy day or whatever you want to call it. You can put your own name on it. But out of that will come the learnings that we need to put together an educated, thoughtful proposal for you. And then you build that relationship and that trust because, I believe that when people are shopping around and talking to different agencies and individuals for their projects, there's no connection there. There's no mutual relationship. So a 10-minute call, a 15-minute Zoom call, whatever you take that you're in this process to try to get them to sign off on your proposal, those experiences, it's real easy for those people to then ghost you, right? They could be like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. And then they might blow you off for the next 3 months or never call you again. But when you sit down face to face and they give you money,
you're working on a
do
project,
it, and you're working on this, even if it's 3 hours of time, it's really hard for them to go, oh, Ken was a nice guy or Brad's a nice guy. I really like their company and they gave me a lot of value. They're not going to ghost you.
I think ghosting and wasted time is a big it was a big factor and a big problem in that space. It's just part of the sales game for any salesperson, right? In any industry.
But you're connected by their money, by their experience.
Once
by their
they're
time.
paying for a service, they're not going to most of the time walk away.
Some of the challenges I have is if you look at new clients that you get and look at the short-term revenue that you might make from them, you might find that 10 to 15% of that time that was spent is based on discovery, or like you said, doing the proposal. And if your profit margin is only 15%, you've lost that because you've given away that 15% for free up front.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, the biggest thing a lot of times with some clients, especially clients that have a lot more this time that you need to discover, right? You need that discovery time to really understand their business because sometimes these businesses are pretty complex. And
well, how many times do you? I mean, this is most often in our experience. Like someone comes and like, hey, we want you to help. We'd love for you to, help us with this type of problem. And they come and eventually they want obviously a price for some sort of a bunch of, the things that they're asking you to do. And they tell you everything that they're asking you to do, or the scope, or the project, whatever kind of project it is, right? They give you the scope and details from their perspective. And how many times do you look at that and go, yeah, that's absolutely clear and there are no unknowns?
Never.
Never. It's almost impossible. And think about, I mean, again, that's normal because I kind of look at your role as a specialist similar to you're the specialist, not the client. That's not taking anything away. That's not, that's not meant to be mean to the clients. It's just like that's not what they do, right? This is what you do. It's kind of like when you go to a doctor, like for a certain thing, like you're going there because they're the specialist in that area. If you come in and just tell them everything and they say, okay, sure, I'll do that, that kind of defeats the purpose, right? So all that to say is you kind of need to dig in, and most people dig in kind of in the proposal stage, but either I would say, if you're smart with your time, you don't dig in that much.
Yeah.
And if you're high risk with your time, you dig in too much, and either one of those is not really good.
Yeah, and we've been doing a lot of stuff now with even clients that we have where they may have a project it's really big, it's very technical, and we just don't have the knowledge to really fully quote it and price it. And so we'll just, we just price up. This is the price for the requirements. Like this is what it takes just to figure out what this project is and to actually put a requirement in a scope this project out. And we've been doing that, and we found that that's easier because it's a small little bite-sized price, but then it helps us to really go, okay, this is really the project, because we've even gotten ourselves to the point where, we've had to kind of, spitball pricing.
Yeah,
and
right.
you're like, if you feel like you're spitballing, that's a high risk. And so we've, it's been really helpful to do these little workshops where you say, hey, it's going to cost $2,000. We're going to really have to workshop this. And there's going to be a cost to it. And we don't know what the price is going to be yet.
And I believe almost every project, anything that people come to you with has unknowns that I think warrants that type of thing.
Yeah.
There's not been one. We've just changed our process, and it's been good. There's not been one that has not helped, and it adds tremendous value to the client, because they're like, I mean, if you take the approach where, like, instead of doing a free proposal, I'm just going to go all in on a strategy session and really add value for a flat fee, small price. If you do that well, they're going to feel really well served no matter what at the end of that. And that creates, the perfect momentum to close the deal. Mm-hmm. And if you were to say, one of the biggest barriers to any deal closing is the confidence of the person that's saying yes. Like, confidence that you're going to be, that this, not even you, it's you, but also the solution is going to get them to what they want, all that kind of stuff. And so if you can walk with them through it and they can have ownership in that, then the result is they have like a lot of clarity to move forward.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I don't know if you've experienced this. I have seen, it's amazing how open and almost like a weight off their shoulders when you propose this to them. Right. Usually the response,
because they're ready to take a big risk on a check.
Right?
Like,
so their response is not like, I don't know, I don't want to give you guys money to pay for a proposal or a strategy. It's usually 9 times out of 10, that's a great idea. And it's almost like, this makes a lot more sense than me going, do I want to commit to this 6-month engagement and spend $200,000 or whatever it is? But you go, hey, you know what? Let's just table that for now. Give me 4 hours of your time for X amount of dollars. And out of that, we will write a strategy doc. We'll know exactly what you prescribe, what you need, how to do it, and what it's going to cost. And they're like, yeah, that sounds really good. When can we do it? And it's amazing.
So Ken, if I was a potential client, I said, okay, that sounds pretty cool, Ken. What do I get for that $1,500 in your time of a day working with me? What are we gonna do? What is it gonna do for us?
Yeah, that's something we had to really dial into, because I think in my what I wanted from that product was a clear result, like a clear deliverable, right? So it's a flat fee, and you get this. It's not ambiguous. It's not, just time. So what we do is we do at least two, a lot of times more calls, just understanding everything, just, with the client. And we might do it in person, is to, like, Bob, you guys do a half-day strategy session, kind of thing, where you just, and you're giving value in those calls. We're really understanding and like hearing them talk about all the things. You break your phone? No, I break my phone.
It was yours.
We got a technical problem here.
Tech check.
Is that your new?
This is my new. Let's see. I don't think it's broken.
You got the new
iPhone 14.
iPhone 14.
I decided
Your 13 wasn't good enough.
I
Ken always gets
12.
I'm going to digress.
I had
for a
a 12, Brad.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I have a 12, so I feel
I have a
old.
12.
Yeah, what are you saying? Ken? I saw a post.
12.
I'm going to digress, but I saw a post from Steve Jobs' daughter. I follow her on Instagram. And she's like, oh, the new iPhone 14's out. It's like an amazing upgrade. And it shows a meme of a guy. For Christmas, he gets a shirt. And it's the same shirt he's wearing. and she was kind of being sarcastic. She's probably thinking my dad would not accept this.
So she was throwing shade on.
She was showing shade out of. Yeah.
Man.
Her name is
that's
Eve
hilarious.
Jobs. You can follow her on.
Well, I'm sure
on
she's.
Instagram.
She has no threat of anything for life.
It's not a giant upgrade from the 12, but I just wanted more space.
That's right.
Anyway, I don't know what I was talking about, but selling stuff.
Yeah, no.
You want to sell stuff.
What's the actual
at the end of the
deliverable?
day.
Oh, yeah, like the deliverable. Like so we do these things, especially for companies that
ours is a document. It's a document and a call.
Yeah, we have a document
and it has a plan.
We do that with not as much of a plan, but we do that with really understanding a client's brand and understand who they are, and we start to make we start journey mapping, right? Their sales process and some messaging and things. And we have we actually have a 2-day workshop for that I lead. And I've condensed that down to a half day for some clients who just can't really, who are just want to get into it and maybe can't afford the 2-day, but we don't have as much. And again, that will inform strategy, but strategy for us isn't something that we sometimes can create with just a sit down. Like we have to take all of that information now and kind of
digest it. And you have to put something together,
and then put together the strategy based on that.
That's why we don't do the day workshops, because we spend time, like, we want to be able to be alone and like think through things and then actually put something together and then come back and be like, okay, here we heard everything. Here's what we heard. Here's what we think is your opportunity.
Yeah.
Here's what we think, based on our experience, you should be doing. Here's how you handle X, Y, and Z.
So you come back with that strategy then after that. Yeah. So you're like, okay, now we know exactly who you are, right?
Yeah.
What you want to do. Yeah. And now we're going to come back with the actual strategy. And it may be different than what you initially thought.
Yeah, a lot of times. And a lot, every single time, there are these question marks. There's something keeping this thing from happening. It could be an unknown. It's always an unknown in some place. So, the goal is that those unknowns, those barriers that have kept this from moving forward, are understood, and kind of there's a solution that you can kind of visualize and see for those things. That to me has often been the magic in these, is that when that happens, then they feel confident moving.
So let's talk some numbers. From your experience, and I know you've been kind of looking at your close rates. What do you see different by kind of this approach versus just spend a couple of days of your team's time to put together a proposal?
Our close rate has almost tripled between from proposal to project versus this strategy to project, which makes a lot of sense when you think about, well, we're actually able to spend time together and not just kind of like be just transactional. Like, we all know no one's getting paid to do anything here. So, but also, like, their focus, I think, is a big part of it, right? Which is like, they've engaged with you at a small level, albeit, but they've engaged with you, and they have skin in the game, so they're going to put the effort in to like really engage and focus, and that produces really
huge,
good results. Yeah. And our project pricing has gone up, like a really healthy amount, mostly because we all know this. In fact, I mentioned this to you yesterday, and this is not a new thing. This is probably, I've heard Grant Cardone say this. A bunch of people say this, but people are happier when you charge them more. Period.
Explain that.
They are.
Explain that. Because I'm not happier when people charge me more.
I think you are.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Comcast? When Comcast charges me, am I happier?
Okay, how about this? You kind of have a nice car and you have a nice house, right? If you didn't,
yeah,
you do.
Yes,
I love your house.
Oh, thank you.
You are grateful. You're not cocky at all. What I'm saying is, if you were charged less, you'd have lower quality of those things, right? And you probably, at the end of the day, wouldn't be super happy with where you're happy with it because you got what you thought was good for what you paid, and you also spent enough to get the thing that was like, hey, I want this type of a house, this type of a car. We're all like that. I think at the end of the day, that's what's funny about money is no one really does care about money. We think we do, but we really care about the results of the money,
security, insecurity, all that stuff,
security and
status, whatever,
or just lifestyle, or like the business results or whatever that may be, right? And so when we skimp on it and we don't invest what we know we should to achieve that, we end up spending money anyway and then not being happy.
Yeah. Well, I think,
and then by the way, the person who did the work also isn't happy.
I think you're talking more about, though, customers having the resources to put in the customer support and say yes instead of no.
Yes.
So, for instance, if so this house, let's talk about, use the house for example. When it was a new house, and so they have a 2-year thing where they would fix stuff, and they were pretty good.
It's a good builder.
Yeah, a good builder, right? You expect the builder that, hey, if you had an issue, that they would not blow you off and and try to not come back and fix a few things, but actually jump on it and say, yes, we'll get it done, and jump on it and fix a few things, and that customer.
So to Ken's point, you're happier to pay more money
to
get the thing that you see as value.
Yeah.
And I really do like your house. It's really nice.
Oh, thanks.
And I think that, well, I just want to say that.
Thanks.
No, it's a compliment. And I think my point is like the money doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't. Like at the end of the day, like what if, let's say you saved 10%, but you had to fix, like you had stuff breaking down and like, you didn't have good quality customer service. Like you called the builder and they're not around. Like, is that worth it? For most people, they might say that it's worth it on the front end, but it's not.
Yeah.
And, like your Comcast example, I would argue that you are being charged more right now because it costs Comcast nothing to create your internet service.
Yeah.
Like, well, let's look at your iPhone.
Right.
Like that iPhone is twice as much as a Samsung or anything else that's on the market. Twice as much, 100% more. But you'll gladly pay it because you like the product, it works, and you like Apple products. It integrates with everything.
Works,
fits into your ecosystem.
It fits in, but it's also like high quality. I know that if I take it back to Apple, they're going to be there and they're going to fix it.
So you don't mind if they go, hey, this year it's not going to be $1,100, it's going to be $1,250.
Yeah,
that is irrelevant to you.
It's not irrelevant. I do think there's psychology in that, right? But it's more comparison.
Yeah, one thing I've never done this, but I think I'm going to, is that if we quote a price, let's say we get to the point where we're pricing and we get bulks from clients, I've never said, hey, this is not enough for us to do to give you the customer service that we give. Yeah. Like we have a standard and we want to make sure that we're attentive to every client that and it's not allowing us to do that. And it's not allowing us to do what we do. And I've never really said that out loud to a client. But I think that is so true. Like when we're happier internally, when we know we have enough, where you're not ever making a decision not to give any client time that they need.
Let's say you negotiated your Comcast bill and they gave it to you for 50%, but it was also slower and it didn't always work.
It didn't always work. Yeah.
Now you're wasting half the money.
So
right? It's the same kind of thing.
I talked to Comcast directly and I said, hey, why is my internet slower for business than my home, and I'm paying twice as much? And they said, well, because you pay for a dedicated rep. So if there's an issue, they immediately get on it. You don't have to wait in line.
So you pay for that, right?
So you're basically paying for.
So to Ken's point, you are happy. It makes you happy to spend more money.
Well, I didn't really have a choice on that matter, but
well, you're happier because they're happier, and everyone can work together, right?
But I do have a personal rep. I call him. He answers on the first 2 rings. He knows me. He looks up my stuff. He can tell me anything and can get things moving. And so I guess when you need it, but at the same time, I'm like, well, then,
So I would argue that, a lot of times when a client, because often what happens in our world, I'm sure it happens to you guys, like someone comes and say, we have this much to spend and we want this done. And can you do it or not? And the temptation is to say yes or yeah, but, and a lot of people say that. And then eventually, like if it goes that way, unfortunately, a lot of times just because there's no relationship and that kind of stuff, like it just goes to the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
I just look back, and this is almost 100% true. Like for projects where we haven't gotten paid enough, no one's happy. For projects where we have the abundance, I won't even like I think abundance is a critical word. Like the abundance to do what we need to do really, really well, pay our people really, really well to do it really, really well, have the freedom to spend more time with the client at times. And, you know, I don't know about you guys in your world, but like when we do projects, like we need stuff from clients, and they're busy. And so, you know, the skimp side of it is like, well, you get an email and like, you just got to like work through it yourself and figure it out. And then, but the white glove side, which is not a luxury, it's just it's helping them leverage their time, is like, why don't we just get on the call and like get it all at once from you, and you don't have to worry about it, right? There's those kind of nuanced, tiny differences that when you're wondering how to pay like where your next meal is going to come from, versus that's not even a concern. You know, as long as you're not a greedy jerk, which I don't think most agencies are. I think most agencies I talk to, even when the client has had bad experiences, just the mechanics are broken. Mm-hmm. They didn't do any, like most people are trying to do really, really good work. They don't have the
process.
Sometimes they charge too little and they just can't. Right. And that's unfortunate for everybody. But then you waste money. Like this is where wasted money comes from. Like, and failed deadlines happen. And, you know, just all the problems that all the businesses that we talk to have.
You said a word, abundance. And for some reason, the first thing that came into my mind, and it shouldn't be, is abundance means overpaid. Means you've gotten.
It's a different word.
The reality is abundance is enough. You're right. It's freedom to continue to draw from.
If your builder didn't have overflow, 2 years later, they wouldn't be able to fix your problem.
Be able to, because they have to build that into the cost.
And we're scared to talk about these things not scared, but like it feels weird to talk about these with clients, but we all people know that that's how business works. That's how life works, right? Like if we're not around, if we don't have enough in general, it's not the client's problem, but if we're not charging enough to have a sustainable business, then that's not good for you.
Yeah.
And whatever you pay us is almost wasted that way.
Unless you go into it really clear what your value proposition is, right? I was listening to a podcast the other day.
That's why I say that there's no objective too much or too little price. I just think that for the situation, for the service provider, the more you charge, the more abundance you have, the happier they'll be. Yeah. That means the more they pay, the happier they'll be.
Yeah. And I was listening to, first I want to say to Brad's point is, I would encourage you to have those conversations with clients more. A phrase that I use that works is when you say, this budget will not allow us to serve you the way that we feel like you want to be, that you need to be served the best. Yeah. And putting it in that context really says, we want to do this for you and we can, but this will not allow us to. Yeah. And so it puts it back on them to say, oh, okay, they're not saying they won't. They're not saying they can't. They're saying, I'm not allowing them to. What do I need to do to allow them to? Yeah. And what you're saying is it's a matter of paying me more money so that I can pay my people so that I can give you what you want. So it's that. But to the point is, I think that's the clear expectation of the deliverable. The amount of money is not the issue, right? Because I was listening to Mark Cuban on Adam Grant's show the other day, and he was talking about his new pharmaceutical company. Forget the name of it. But his whole thing is, he's like, if you want high customer service, that's not us. If you want your meds overnight or within a couple of days, that's not us. If you want to talk to someone on the phone he goes, you probably won't. He says, but we'll get you your meds a lot cheaper. And so he's like, And so Adam said, so you're the Southwest Airlines. He's like, actually, yeah. He goes, exactly. And so he's like, as long as that's really clear and about, right. He goes,
in your brand
and we don't advertise. Like, we're not going to spend money on advertising. But if you're paying $150 a month for your medication for your diabetes, and we can lower that to, $50 a month, that's what we're all about. And so I think it's like managing those expectations of whatever it is you're going into. Be very clear, like Mark Cuban was, like, we're not going to give you those things. On the other side of the coin is, like you're saying, we can give you all these things. We can, take care of your house for 2 years after it's all bought, and we'll fix anything. But here's the price. And we're going to be clear if you want that. And like to your point is, it makes them happy when you charge them more money.
And I would say that for the most part, most clients kind of expect all those things. They're looking for all those things that you mentioned on the white glove side, right? Implicitly. And so if you are you're explicitly not that, like we're the Mark Cuban pharmaceutical version, you probably need to say that very clearly, quickly up front, because most people assume that you're up here. Sure. And that's where people get into trouble. Everyone assumes that they're going to get
it's just expectation.
White glove service, and that's part of the it's expectation, and I think expectation.
But the cool thing is Mark knows his lane.
Yeah,
like he knows exactly what that business is going to be.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key too, is if you can communicate that to your potential client as an agency. This is who we are. This is what we're not.
Right.
Too. This is not what we're not, because then you create
and you came to us for this, and we're telling you that budget will not allow us to serve you what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times we have potential clients, they literally they come with already a plan that they think they need with a budget that they think they can afford. And a lot of times that's not what they need, isn't really what they're thinking they need, and what the cost is not what it's going to cost.
Right.
And somehow they just pull this out of the air.
Yes,
a lot of times they pull this out of the air.
The temptation, if they're coming to you with that, is to say yes.
Yeah.
And
you're right. The temptation is to say yes because they're kind of holding out
right.
But it's not probably what's best for them.
But it's just interesting. Like, I just think for anyone who's price conscious is listening to this on the service side or on the client side, I mean, money, expensive versus cheap is all relative. There's always a more expensive option. There's always a bunch of cheaper options.
Yeah.
Always.
And
and it's relative, to the client as well. Like the client, it just depends. And so I don't think that I just think that you need to think, how do I create enough abundance to really do this well? And then make it clear, like walk them through that.
Make it clear. So what's your lane?
But
this has been good, guys. Good hacks, good tips.
Yeah.
And
and thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Ken too.
Oh, I talked too much probably.
No. I think you've been, this is something that's close to you, and you're doing something new, I think, with your.
This has been working really well for us and for our clients. It's funny, we've gotten a whole bunch of people saying how happy they were through this process.
Yeah.
And it helps you to weed out people too. Like every once in a while, you'll get somebody like, we worked with them for half a day, and I don't think we want to work with them again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, until next time.
Yes.
Keep pushing on.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.